MG, two letters that spark nostalgia in the minds of most British people. It does for me. I mean, I own an old MGB. Actually, I've got a picture of it here, actually. I mean, it's nothing special, but it means a lot to me. And you see, MGs, to me, are all about sports cars. So you can imagine my horror when I discovered that MG is now building an SUV.
I say horror because every car maker is making one these days, and it seems as though everyone is buying one to adorn their driveways. So, MG, resurrected 6 years ago by the Chinese, has to build cars people will actually buy. And that's, unfortunately, SUVs. Mazda has the small, cheap sports car market sewn up with its MX-5, so it's only right MG looks elsewhere. So, this is it, the new GS.
Now, the first thing to mention about the GS is the fact that it goes up against cars like the Nissan Qashqai in terms of size and the Nissan Juke in terms of price. For a comparison, the GS costs £3,500 less than a Nissan Qashqai and a whopping £8,000 less than a Mazda CX-5. And yes, there isn't a piece of soft touch plastic at all in here, and the buttons down here are really chaotic, and there's a strange smell of adhesive in here. It really isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. In actual fact, it's a lot better than MG's previous efforts. The biggest irony of all is that the GS isn't built in Birmingham like the MG3 or the now deceased MG6, but imported straight from China.
Storage is just average in the GS. The glove box is big enough for a large packet of crisps, and the armrest cubby is of a good size, but the cup holders are small and the door bins fail the Carbuyer big bottle test. The spec is pretty good though. There are 3 trims. Entry-level Explore gets 17-inch wheels, aircon, a USB input, cruise control, electric mirrors and automatic lights, but it only comes in white or black. Excite adds Bluetooth, a leather steering wheel, DAB radio, rear parking sensors and a parking camera. Top drawer exclusive, like our car, adds leather upholstery, electric and heated front seats, 18-inch wheels, side steps, roof bars and sat-nav.
Back here, and the news is so-so. Let me explain. Well, first of all, the knee room is just pretty good actually. That seat is set up in my driving position. I'm just under 5'11" and I've got that amount of knee room. Headroom is okay, and I can actually adjust this backrest for a bit more comfort, so I can recline it a bit, and yeah, that's really quite comfortable. Because there's no four-wheel drive option on the GS, something I'll explain about a little bit later, that does mean there's no transmission tunnel, which means it's great if you want to carry a third passenger because they've got somewhere to put their feet. What's not quite so good is the fact that this middle seat is really quite flat and uncomfortable. And the same goes for these 2 outer seats really, because they're not that supportive. There is Isofix and a couple of cup holders in here, but overall it's just about average really. Around at the boot, there's some, unsavoury news. If I open up the tailgate, the space on offer there is 355 litres. Now, to put that in comparison, the Renault Kadjar has 470 litres, so the GS is considerably smaller than its nearest rivals. In actual fact, there's less space on offer here than there is in the SsangYong Tivoli, and that's a car from the class below. However, there is some good news, I'm confident of it. These seats fold 60/40 and they fold completely flat. Look at that. That's really unusual in a car of this class. And there's a space saver spare wheel, which comes as standard. So there is less space on offer, but it comes with some extra nice bits and pieces.
While most manufacturers offer a range of engines in their mid-sized SUVs, in the MG there's just one, a 1.5 litre turbocharged petrol with front-wheel drive. There's a healthy 164 brake horsepower, which gives a decent 0-62 acceleration time of 9.6 seconds, and there's a choice of gearboxes. There's a good 6-speed manual and a new 7-speed dual-clutch automatic. We tested the Auto and it really isn't particularly good. Sometimes it's quite hesitant to change, and at other times it's jerky.
My recommendation would be to stick with the 6-speed manual because it's a perfectly decent gearbox. Now, Chinese MG has tried to instill some of the good old days of MG sports cars by making its cars fun to drive, and the GS isn't too bad. The steering is nicely weighted, it's fairly accurate. The car rides bumps okay at low speeds. At higher speeds it bumps around a little bit, but the body control is really very good.
And while the 1.5 is good for a petrol engine, it's not particularly cheap to run. Claimed figures are 46.3 mpg, but we only got in the high 30s. CO2 emissions of 139 grams per kilometre means it's quite costly to tax. In fact, the auto is in the next VED band above the petrol. If you want four-wheel drive and diesel, you'll have to look elsewhere, which counts quite considerably against the MG.
The last niggle is to do with price. Now, whilst the entry-level car really seems to be very good value for money, this high-spec car with its dual-clutch transmission is well over £21,000, and for that type of money, there are far more talented alternatives. You know, the GS really isn't that much of a bad car. Yes, it only has one petrol engine, and yes, the plastics are a bit cheap inside, but it is full of standard equipment. It has a 5-year warranty, and I don't think it looks too bad either. Go for one of the cheaper models, and the GS is a perfectly acceptable route into the world of the mid-sized SUV. It's definitely the best car new MG has made.
If you're interested in the GS, then why not check out its rivals? Click the video on the left for the best-selling Nissan Qashqai, or on the right for the smaller but similar SsangYong Tivoli. Click at the top for our latest video and on our logo to subscribe.